avid reader of all kinds of books. And I've recently been asked, in the last couple weeks, to review a specific book. Or rather, books by a specific author. The author in question is named Brittanee Nicole, and she is a romance author. Now, you may be wondering, why are you reading romance books? You're clearly not the target demographic. I shun stereotypes as a whole, and as such, I'm going to be reviewing a romance novel by Brittanee Nicole. The novel in question combines two of the most American things possible: hockey and romance, right? No country loves hockey more than America. And no country loves love more than America. So, it's going to be very interesting to read a book that combines these two themes. So, sit back and relax as I review Hockey Boy by Brittanee Nicole. So I noticed very early on, this is a very well-written book, surprisingly. When you think of romance novels, you typically think of the MTV or TLC equivalent of a book, where it's just pure slop for the masses to consume. And that surprisingly was not the case. This is pretty well written for a romance novel. Maybe I just haven't been exposed enough to the genre to tell the difference between a good and a bad romance novel. But considering the last book I read was bad, this is very well written. In the first 10 chapters, we meet our protagonist and the other protagonist. We have Aiden. Aiden is a male hockey player who plays for the Boston Bolts. The Boston Bolts are an NHL insert team, and he makes a lot of money. He's currently engaged to a woman named Jill. Jill is very rich as well, comes from money, so they have this engagement going on, but it's not a happy one. It's a pretty tense situation they got going on. Aiden has the love of his life. The love of his life is a woman named Lennox. They dated briefly in the past, and they had an on and off kind of thing going on. And Lennox and Aiden came to an agreement where if it ever got too serious, if their feelings ever went too far, one of them would say the word Shamrock, because Aiden's hockey nickname was Leprechaun. Because Boston, right? So the first 10 chapters of this book, a lot of events go very, very, very quickly. And I think that is I think that's the point of this genre, is you never want to get bored. Events move very quickly throughout this entire book. So in the first 10 chapters, a lot goes on. Aiden and his fiancée go to a wedding planner to plan their wedding before the NHL season starts. However, the love of his life, Lennox, is the person who's planning the wedding. Aiden immediately comes to the realization he does not want to spend the rest of his life with Jill. The second the wedding planning appointment is over, he dumps Jill. But he has to win Lennox back. So he gets together with his boys on the hockey team, and he explains the situation to them. And Aiden eventually has an idea. Aiden's genius plan is to pretend he's still getting married, so he can spend more time with Lennox, the wedding planner, his, love, person he wants. This entire time, these chapters are split. One chapter will be Aiden's point of view, the other chapter will be Lennox's point of view. And early on in the book, this is how we learn about the characters, this is how we learn about their motivations. And it's very interesting to see both sides of the coin, right? Because a lot of romance books, you'll only see one perspective. This shifts the perspectives between the two. Out of the other romance books I've previously read, it's almost entirely from the female perspective, which makes sense. It's written for a female audience. But it's very interesting to see how the author handles these shifting perspectives in the writing. And I honestly have to say it works out pretty well. Because it's like, we, the audience, the reader, we know something these characters don't. And it's a lot like a TV show in that way, with the exposition. So, the first 10 chapters of this book are pretty pretty fairly well written. Now, I have a disclaimer for all of you. I am, in fact, a man. As I've previously said, I am not the target demographic of this kind of book. So, I was really interested to see what the target demographic of this kind of book thinks about the novel. What does the public have to say about Hockey Boy? And the answer is, they fucking love it. Now, this book is a lot longer than other romance books I've read. Again, my experience with the genre, very limited. However, this one is almost 500 pages long, which for a romance novel, I don't know. Again, I don't know. I'm in unfamiliar waters here, but 500 pages of romance novel is a lot. That's longer than the first Harry Potter book. That's a pretty big book. It's about the size of the Bible. It's a Bible's worth of romance novel. So, it's a long book, comparatively, right? That being said, as we continue to move through the rest of this book, we start to settle into a pattern, right? And there's a few big events I'll cover, but we start to settle into a pattern. Each shift in perspective gives a will they, won't they. Obviously, we can tell they both feel the same way. Aiden and Lennox, they're both into each other, right? Lennox is like, oh my god, is he with someone else? And then Aiden will be like, oh my god, she doesn't like me. She's gonna say the naughty word. Shamrock, again, for those of you who forgot in the last 3 minutes. But we fall into a pattern where it's like a will they, won't they the entire time. Aiden will do something, he'll like kiss her, or he'll, stimulate her emotionally as well as physically on occasion. And we have this pattern, and it goes on, and it's kind of the same for the next 20 chapters, right? And it follows a pretty standard romance novel trajectory, and it has a lot of tropes. That is one thing I kind of dislike about this book, is it leans on romance novel tropes a little too much for my liking. Aiden and Lennox start a fake relationship a little bit whiles into the book, right? So we have a fake relationship trope. We have a will they, won't they going on the entire time, and it's clear they both want it, but at some point you have to wonder, why is it taking this long for them to just get to the point? It seems to me, right, and this is just me as a man, unfamiliar with this genre. It seems like at some point you just buckle up and dive into it, right? And eventually they do. But it takes a really long time. So we're going to do a lightning round. A lot of big major events that happen in the first half to middle third of this book, right? Lennox and Aiden continue hanging out because Lennox is planning Aiden's wedding that she doesn't know is called off already. Aiden somehow finagles it to where he's not directly lying to Lennox, because this is a wedding that's being planned, just not with him in mind. It's with one of his teammates. Either teammates or brother. Again, my literary comprehension isn't that good. But the wedding is still on. It's just someone else's wedding, right? Lennox and Aiden go to another wedding. They crash someone else's separate wedding to try to book the band, and one of the band members starts hitting on Lennox. And Aiden gets very pissed off and very possessive, which again is another very classic literary trope in the romance genre. The male character will probably get extremely possessive of the female, either protagonist or in this case, deuteragonist. But events just keep coming. And when I say coming, I hate to say it, there are points, literally, there are a lot of extremely explicit sex scenes in this book. Which, if I'm putting myself into the shoes of the target demographic, again, we're talking like 30 to 60-year-old women, right? Maybe this is something I'd be into, right? They have this romantic thing going on, and then it's like, bam, sex scene out of nowhere. It gets you like a jump scare. So, there's one very notable moment in this book, in the beginning part of this book, where Aiden has a panic attack, which brings me into a very important topic to discuss when we're talking about this book in particular. Aiden kind of has a mental health, he has some mental health issues. He sees a therapist weekly, which is good, right? And I think that's really good writing by the writer to try to normalize that, like going to therapy is for male characters. That's probably a really good thing to keep in mind when writing a book like this, and especially when tackling topics like this. But he goes to a therapist on the weekly, and there's one point where he's hanging out on in a roofside pool with Lennox, and he starts to have a panic attack, right? And the panic attack part is handled very, very well, I would 100% say, right? He's kind of out of it, he's not sure what's going on, and then immediately, less than a page later, we get into a very erotic scene, might I say. And the next chapter is just Lennox's reaction to this erotic scene. She's a little upset, it didn't keep going. And it's kind of it's a jarring shift for me in particular, because I'm reading this, I'm like, all right, handling mental health, yeah, holy shit, she's on top of him. So that's just something interesting to think about, is this book does cover mature themes like, mental health, things like that. But while it's handled well, it can cause a lot of tonal dissonance, is how I'm going to put it, right? So there's a lot of scenes, keeps going on, and eventually, dear viewer, we get to the last third of this book, and shit gets crazy. So I have an apology for all of you. Sincerely. This book is actually extremely good. And because of how good I feel this book is, I'm not going to spoil the last third for you. I just can't. I feel like I'd be doing you a disservice. Right? So I put a link in the description so you can download this book and read the last third for yourself and put your thoughts down and ponder it and think about it. But I've already spoiled a lot of this book, and I don't want to spoil more than I have to. So this last third is just going to be my overall thoughts on the book itself. Once again, I'm unfamiliar in the world of romance novels, right? And I haven't read a lot of them, personally. But having read this, I think that might change. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of this book that is not meant to appeal to me. And I think that's okay. I think it's a good thing to step out of your comfort zone and to watch media or read media that you're not used to reading and that you don't usually look at. And that's definitely how I would summarize my experience reading this book. It's not going to be for everyone, for sure. if you're completely against the idea of a romance novel, you're probably not going to like this book. It's just a matter-of-fact thing. However, if you keep an open mind and you read it, I'd say this book is pretty good for what it is. It's pretty good. It's only like $5 too. That's not bad. For this amount of entertainment, you get 500 pages a book for this much money. If you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you get it for free. So in terms of entertainment value, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5. The literary tropes really got to me. They got under my skin. But I can accept it for what it is. In terms of a romance novel, again, like a 4 out of 5. Maybe even a 5 out of 5. It's pretty solid. It's the best one I've read so far. If you're looking for just smut, there's a lot of really explicit scenes. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of them. But also, this entire book it's not the craziest thing I've ever read. It's on par with probably like Game of Thrones in terms of how explicit the sex scenes get. Maybe a little more. 5 out of 5. For sure. Like, it's just a solid book. I can't complain. And I'm not even being paid by this person to say it. It's just a good book. So, yeah. Thank you all for watching. Stop watching. Go read the book.